The New Testament, Book of Acts, chapter 5, verses 12 through 16. The apostles heal many. The apostles were performing many miraculous signs and wonders among the people, and all the believers were meeting regularly at the temple in an area known as Solomon's Colonnade. But no one else dared to join them, even though all the people had high regard for them. Yet more and more people believed and were brought to the Lord, crowds of both men and women. As a result of the apostles' work, sick people were brought out into the streets on beds and mats so that Peter's shadow might fall across some of them as he went by. Crowds came from the villages around Jerusalem, bringing their sick and those possessed by evil spirits, and they were all healed.
Algunos eruditos de la Biblia nos dicen que el libro de los Hechos es un libro de señales y prodigios. Algunos piensan que es la historia de cómo Dios endosó el trabajo de los apóstoles en los días después de Jesús. Some Bible scholars think that the book of Acts is a book of signs and wonders. In something, it is the story of how God endorsed the work of the apostles in the days post Jesus. Lo cierto es que los apóstoles y su cristianismo estaban en su mejor momento. Su fama había llegado al punto que se escuchaban rumores de que solo la sombra de Pedro sanaba y curaba a las personas. Para mí eso era demasiado ya. The heart of the matter is that the apostles and their Christianity, I'm going to bold that part, their Christianity, were at their best. Their fame had reached the point that rumors were heard that only the shadow of Peter healed and cured people. That was too much. Los discípulos habían llegado a la cima del éxito, estaban en su mejor momento. No solamente tenían la reputación de haber sido entrenados por el mismo Jesús, sino que ahora también tenían un poder sobrenatural. The disciples had reached the pinnacle of success. They were at their peak. Not only they did have the reputation of having been trained by Jesus himself, but now they had supernatural powers. Pero inmediatamente después de este incidente, de Pedro sanando gente con su sombra, donde las personas eran sanadas solamente con la sombra de Pedro, los discípulos son víctimas de su primera persecución. A partir de ahí se les acabó la fiesta a los discípulos. La fiesta se terminó. But almost immediately after this incident, where people were healed by Peter's shadow alone, the disciples were victims of their first persecution. From then on, the party was over for the disciples. The feast was over. It was like their moment of illumination and transfiguration was over. They have to come down from the mountain. Era como que si su momento de transfiguración se hubiese terminado y tuvieran que bajar de la montaña. Nótese que era el mejor momento para los apóstoles. No solamente tenían buena fama, sino que su predicación era también apoyada con señales y prodigios. Pero de repente llegó la tragedia y las cosas nunca volvieron a ser iguales. Note that it was the best time of the disciples and for the disciples. Not only did they have a good reputation, but their preaching was also supported with signs and wonders. La historia de los discípulos es, en cierta forma, es la historia de todos nosotros. Y es que cuando pensamos que todo está bajo control, que estamos en el mejor momento de nuestra vida, entonces las cosas empiezan a moverse sin pedirnos permiso, sin dejarnos más opción que confiar en Dios. So the story of the disciples is like, in a certain way, the story of all of us. It is when we think we have everything under control, when we think it is the best moment of our lives, when things start to move without asking our permission, leaving us no choice but to trust God, in God only. Pero hay dos cosas en el pasaje que me parecen interesantes y al mismo tiempo peligrosas. Por un lado, el fanatismo de las personas en idolatrar a seres humanos comunes y corrientes, y por el otro, el tema que esos seres humanos comunes y corrientes se la creyeron. But there are two things in today's passage that I find interesting and at the same time dangerous. On the one hand, the fanaticism of people in idolizing ordinary human beings, and on the other hand, the issue that those human beings also believe it. No es necesario recordar que el fanatismo de las personas lo que el fanatismo de las personas puede llegar a hacer. La historia humana se ha encargado de preservar eventos que nos enseñan los peligros de idolatrar a otros seres humanos. It is not necessary to remember that what fanaticism of people can do. Human history has preserved events that teach us the dangers of idolizing another human being. La historia moderna nos recuerda las atrocidades de Hitler y de otros muchos que después de ser idolatrados hasta por los mismos cristianos, fueron protagonistas de los momentos más crueles y oscuros de la historia humana. Modern history reminds us of the atrocities of Hitler and of many others who, after being idolized even by Christians, were the protagonists of the cruelest and darkest moments in human history. Y es que a los humanos nos gusta fabricar dioses. Antropológicamente hablando, hemos nacido con la necesidad de crear semidioses entre nosotros, de esos mitad humano, mitad Dios. And the fact is that we humans like to manufacture gods. Anthropologically, we were born with the need to create demigods among us, those half human, half gods. Pero es allí cuando la vida misma se encarga de bajarnos de la nube, de enviarnos mensajeros desde el lado negativo de la vida para que nuestra mirada esté puesta en Dios, desde donde viene todo lo abundante. But it is there when life itself takes charge of bringing us down from the cloud, of sending us messengers from the negative side of life, so that our gaze is set on God, from where everything abundant comes from. En ese sentido, los discípulos de Jesús tampoco pudieron escapar de la trampa del ego. Y este es precisamente el problema cristiano desde tiempos inmemorables. El cristianismo y su ego arrogante mal ubicado. In that sense, Jesus' disciples did not escape the ego trap either. And this is precisely the Christian's tragedy since time immemorial. Christianity and its misplaced arrogant ego. Es difícil reconocerlo. Es una tragedia aceptarlo. But it's true. It's difícil, it's so difficult to recognize it. It's difficult to accept it. Pero es verdad. But it's true. Los evangelios nos muestran los problemas que los discípulos tenían con su ego, y no me extrañaría pensar que Dios haya tenido que bajarlos de esa nube donde las personas y ellos mismos les habían puesto. The gospel invites us to see the problems that the disciples had with their ego. And it will not surprise me to think that God had to bring them down from that cloud where people and themselves have put them. I cannot imagine myself, David, healing without my own shadow. No puedo imaginarme yo, David, sanando gente con mi propia sombra. I cannot imagine me, myself, being moderator of this church. No puedo imaginarme yo, David, siendo un moderador de esta iglesia. Power is power. Poder es poder. And giving power to people is sometimes dangerous. Y alguna vez darle poder a cierta gente es peligroso. And I will say again, giving power to wrong people is sometimes dangerous. Y darle poder a gente equivocada a veces es peligrosa. A nosotros también nos pasa lo mismo. Alimentar nuestro ego es darle de amamantar a un monstruo que eventualmente no podremos controlar. Por eso la pregunta de esta mañana es, ¿qué tipo de cosas el ego cristiano no nos permite ver? ¿Qué beneficio nos traería poder verle? So the same thing happens to us. The same thing happens to us. Feeding our ego is like feeding a monster that eventually we will not be able to control. So the question this morning is, what kind of things does the Christian ego not allow us to see? What kind of things does our Christian ego not allow us to see? And what benefit would it bring us to see them?
Yeah, Gary has too much power. No, I think a lot of times in churches we cling to traditions and we think that is what worship has to be.
Algunas veces en las iglesias pensamos, nos agarramos de la tradición y pensamos que eso es lo que la iglesia debería de ser. It's true. So maybe we need to humanize tradition, right? Quizás deberíamos de humanizar las tradiciones.
Tal vez las verdades que existen en otras religiones, tal vez las verdades que existen en otras religiones, like maybe truths that exist in other religions, porque en muchos círculos cristianos no queremos decir que podemos encontrar verdad en otras religiones o filosofías. Yo pienso que eso es peligroso. I think a lot of times in some Christian circles, we can not acknowledge that you can find some truths or wisdoms in other religions, and I think that's dangerous.
Thank you. That's a powerful thing to say.
Yeah, this is a similar thing. I think it doesn't allow us to see each other and see the other rather than we center on ourselves. It's just, you would center on yourself if you have the big ego during the week, and so and part of the service is part of Christian service is to kind of humble yourself to that there's something greater than yourself, and that way it allows you to see the whole world. Maybe.
Uno de los problemas muy relacionados a lo que ella dice es que este tipo de arrogancia, el ego no nos deja ver al otro. Y de eso precisamente se trata, de ver a la otra persona y no necesariamente solo vernos a nosotros.
Sometimes we think that if we're already doing something, it's got to be right, and we have to keep doing it. And so we're not open to new ideas or new interpretations.
Algunas veces pensamos que lo que estamos haciendo es lo correcto y queremos seguir haciéndolo y necesitamos estar abiertos a nuevas ideas y a nuevas interpretaciones.
I think the first few chapters of the book of Acts kind of tell the story of the church's honeymoon period.
Yo pienso que los primeros 3 capítulos del libro de Hechos son como la luna del miel de la iglesia.
Where everything was perfect.
Donde todo era perfecto.
And I think we can spend a lot of energy trying to bring back the honeymoon.
Podíamos pasar meterle un montón de energías tratando de volver a la luna de miel.
When what we need in churches is a mature relationship.
Cuando lo único que necesitamos en las iglesias es una relación madura. Powerful. Yeah, it's true.
I think we pride ourselves on our, quote, values, that we think we have such wonderful, we have, we agree on certain kinds of values, but then we don't necessarily do anything.
Nosotros
we do
miramos
something,
como,
but we need to be doing more.
pensamos que como tenemos valores, es lo que llamamos valores, es lo único que tenemos. Deberíamos de ser lo suficiente, pero realmente deberíamos estar haciendo algo más que eso. No pretendo insinuar que las tragedias que les sucedieron a los discípulos eran un castigo de Dios o de los dioses por su ego inflado. Lo que quiero decir es que la vida nos ofrece momentos de gloria y otros momentos donde la gloria no se encuentra. I do not mean to imply that the tragedies that happened to the disciples were a punishment from God or the gods for their inflated ego. What I mean is that life constantly offers people moments of glory and other moments where glory is not to be found. Tal vez no fue su ego. Quizás finalmente se dieron cuenta que podían ser uno con Dios, así como su maestro Jesús era uno con su Padre. Cosas más grandes que estas harán, les dijo Jesús. Perhaps it was not their ego. Perhaps they finally realized that they could be one with God, just as Jesus said was one with his Father. As Jesus told them, in fact, you will do greater work than this. La vida se nos plantea así, misteriosa. Dios nos ofrece días donde los pasamos, donde pensamos que podemos comernos el mundo y otros momentos donde el mundo nos ha comido a nosotros. Life is presented to us in this way, mysterious. It offers us days where we think we can conquer the world, the whole world, and be on the peak one day. In other moments where we feel like we're ending in a lost world. Cualquiera que sea el caso, hemos de aprender que a pesar de que nuestros momentos cambien, la presencia amorosa e infinita de Dios sigue acompañándonos todo el tiempo. Whatever the case may be, we must learn that even though our moments may change, God's loving and infinite presence is still with us all the time. Y ya que sea que sintamos que estamos en la cima o en el valle de sombras, ojalá podamos encontrar alegría y contentamiento en cada momento. And whether we feel that we are at the top or in the valley of the shadows, may we find joy and contentment in every moment we live. Black lives matter. No human being is illegal. Amen.